Welcome to Total Retail Talks, your podcast channel for retail knowledge.
Hello, and welcome to this episode of Total Retail Talks. I'm Joe Keenan, Editor-in-Chief of Total Retail, and I am joined on today's show by Jeff Swearingen, who is the Senior Vice President, Demand Accelerator, Venturing and Global Business Services at PepsiCo. Thanks for joining me today, Jeff.
Hi, Joe. I'm glad to be here. Thanks for the opportunity.
So I want to talk to you about a couple of different things, but let's start here by mentioning that you recently participated in a panel discussion during the National Retail Federation's Converge event that was focused on the new connected economy. Let's talk about kind of in the last year plus, what with the shift to the economy that we've seen and how consumers are engaging and interacting with brands, how that has been different and what you've seen in your experiences at PepsiCo.
Yeah, it's a great question. The last, I would say 18 months obviously has been very different for everyone. Just in terms of behavior, shopping behavior, there have been big changes really in most markets around the world. In the US, we've seen about 80% of consumers shop for food and beverage online in the last year, which is a significant increase. Maybe what's more interesting even than the overall increase is we've seen it go up in older households and lower income households, which typically have been a little bit slower to adopt new technology. And now, even in the US, as things are beginning to open up a bit, we're seeing a lot of that behavior shift stick. So we're still, through our survey work at least, seeing about 40% of households in the US claiming to shop both online and in brick and mortar stores on a weekly basis. So it's definitely been a trigger event that has changed the way consumers shop for food and beverage in the US. And as you look at markets around the world, I think you see a similar acceleration. If you look at a market like China, which is very digitally advanced, you see new forms of digital commerce starting to really take root over the last 18 months. Social commerce, group commerce, convenient e-commerce. Those are the kinds of things that have really grown in advanced markets like China, which have been very well developed in traditional food and beverage online for a while.
So I'm going to get into some of those new digital experiences that you just mentioned, but I think maybe a good place, and maybe I should have started with this for some context for the audience. Your particular role at PepsiCo, so Senior Vice President, Demand Accelerator, Venturing and Global Business Services. It's kind of a long title there. Maybe break that down to what that means, what kind of your day-to-day role at PepsiCo, and then across all the different brands that you work with.
Yeah, so it's a global role. So we work across all markets and the full PepsiCo portfolio. So foods, beverages, snacks. The Demand Accelerator part of that is a very commercially focused team. So think of parts of marketing, sales, insights, and analytics. And the intent in that group is really to find ways to drive granular growth and to create more personalized experiences for consumers. So let me give you an example of what I mean by that. If you think about just your own life in the last day or two, you could probably identify times when maybe you've gotten an ad that you knew wasn't really targeted to you, but for some reason you saw it. Or maybe you were shopping for something and the particular assortment wasn't really perfect for what you were looking for. Our job is to try to address all of those speed bumps for the shopper and to make sure that through using data and digital connectivity, we're engaging them in ways that are very targeted, very uniquely motivating, and that we're pulling that through all the way to retail so that the in-store experience, the assortment, the merchandising, the presentation delivers against that expectation that we've created in media. So, a little later on, if you'd like, I can get into the details around how we do that. In the US, I can give you a lot of detail around how we're building that experience. The other two pieces I'll hit quickly. The venturing side, think going further upstream to achieve those goals, you want to be working with the best partners that you can in industry. And in some cases, those are going to be startup companies. And so we have a very robust team called Pep Labs that works with venture capitalists and works with startup companies to find cutting edge technologies that can help us achieve our goals. And then downstream, global business services, you want to be able to democratize those capabilities as they mature and make them easily available to your teams all across the world. So in a sense, it all hangs together. It's a ridiculously long title, but the intent is to connect those upstream technologies through commercialization to solve those very clear business problems, and then as they mature, to democratize them in ways that make them easily available around the world.
So to your initial answer to my first question, in terms of kind of the shifts we've seen in consumer behavior, you noted some of the things that you're seeing at PepsiCo and we're seeing across the industry, both retail, CPG, kind of the brand side as well, which leads into a kind of a natural follow-up there is, okay, you've identified some of these shifts that you're seeing. What are you doing at PepsiCo kind of to adapt to that shift in the economic landscape? What kind of consumer behavioral shifts you've seen as well?
Yeah, there are a couple of things. I'd start with the objective. You know, our objective, I've been with PepsiCo for 27 years. And even if you go back to the very beginning of my career, one of the things that we used to talk about is from a physical availability perspective, being within arm's reach. If I fast forward to 2021, the way that comes to life now is a very omni-channel experience. And so part of what we want is to be available to consumers where they're looking for products like ours. And that is today in many, many forms. It may be in brick and mortar stores, it may be in traditional pure play e-com environments, or it may be through social media, or things that are a little bit more away from what we would call traditional retail. So we have to be present in all those environments. The second is the way that we would have engaged with people 27 years ago is through, big broadcast television commercials. And we still do a fair amount of that, but more and more we use data and digital connectivity so that we're creating and curating messages in ways that are really targeted. So our team works to connect those two things. And now more than ever, we're connecting those throughout the entire omni-channel experience. So the way that we would show up for you in a brick and mortar environment is targeted to that context. The way that we would show up in an online environment is targeted to that context, so that we're hopefully meeting the contextual needs of whatever motivated you to shop in that environment at that time.
So you talk about kind of the importance and how critical data is in terms of being able to create these relevant experiences, that digital connectivity that's so critical today. Can you tell us a little bit about how you're trying to do that at PepsiCo? I would imagine as a CPG company as well, there's some challenges in terms of collecting that data if you're not owning that in-store experience through your retail partners. Tell us a little bit about how you're using data and technology to create those meaningful brand interactions. And as you mentioned, it's really omni-channel at this point across all the different channels in which you're engaging with customers.
Yeah, Joe, it's a great question. So let me give you an example in the US. In the US, we started this journey about 6 years ago now, and we have a consumer data set in the US that's about 105 or 6 million households, and about half that data set is what we call first party data. So those are folks that have opted into brand programming. They've opted into different initiatives that we have, and they've said, here's our information, and we'd love for you to contact us and stay in touch and provide offers and other entertainment to us. So we're lucky that we have a really rich data set in the US. We supplement that with other forms of data where we may know less information and we can do modeling against it, but we do have strong first-party data within that. On the retail side, we are in the US largely what we call direct store delivery retail. That means that we have associates that go in stores, in many cases, multiple times a week to service those stores. So we have a data set in the US of about 500,000 retail outlets. So what's really cool from a media to shelf perspective for us is the ability to use that consumer data set to identify the most valuable consumers and shoppers for different promotions or innovations or parts of our portfolio brands, and then to if you think of those consumers as pens, kind of drop those pens on a map and identify the most valuable stores where they're most likely to shop and convert their demand. So that allows us to not only create the right media to engage them, but because we understand the most valuable stores, we can cluster those stores and drive the right assortment of products, very different assortment of products, store to store, the right merchandising, and the right in-store promotions to speak directly to that type of consumer. Because we have this direct store delivery sales force, the opportunity to curate the environment at store level is a really strong advantage as well.
How are you collaborating with your retail partners? You mentioned that kind of that specifically to that in-store piece in terms of the merchandising and any promotion. Tell us a little bit about kind of the role they play in and how you've kind of established those relationships.
Yeah, it is a full-on partnership, and I'm incredibly proud of that. I'd say PepsiCo has always been blessed with really strong retail partnerships. And over the last 5 or 6 years, as both of us, PepsiCo and our retail partners have seen consumer demand be more digitally driven, the partnerships have gotten even stronger, and we do a lot of collaboration. And I actually think it's one of the pieces of advice I give people often in the space is I think more than ever that collaboration is critical because the market is moving so fast. It's important to be able to bring the best collective thinking against common opportunities and common challenges. And so we work very closely with them, and we're better for it.
Yeah, and then that's kind of that holistic. You've talked a little bit about kind of what PepsiCo is doing to create that holistic online and then in-store experience for consumers in terms of the media they're seeing digitally, and then potentially the in-store experience, the merchandise selection in different stores. Tell us a little bit, just to kind of put a wrap on that in terms of the holistic online and in-store experience for consumers and how you're trying to accomplish that at PepsiCo.
Yeah, I think this is probably common, but often initiatives will start as being independent initiatives. We have an in-store strategy, we have an online strategy, but it doesn't really work like that anymore. We really have to have an integrated strategy. And we want more and more to be able to understand shopping behavior across all of the touch points. And we want to be able to attribute impact at different levels across touch points so that we have this holistic sense of shoppers across all the touch points for food and beverage, shopping, and conversion. And that's a journey. I'm just going to be honest. That's not something that we've perfected. That's something that we're working on. But we're getting to a place where we're able to do that to a degree that I think allows us to better deliver against consumers' expectations, which are a little bit different in different environments. Even today, if you look at the best-selling products as an example, online versus the best-selling products in brick and mortar stores, it's not usually the same list. There's overlap, but it's not the same list. So understanding that and catering to those differences is important. And we're working really hard to do that and making good progress.
Yeah, and as you said, Jeff, it's a journey. It's kind of a shared strategy, and we've talked a lot about the consumer experience. I just want to ask one question, kind of internally at PepsiCo. I imagine that's a shared strategy as well, and that's probably across multiple teams. How does that kind of work within your group, and then others that are touching upon that same kind of omni-channel strategy? Do you want to tell us a little about the internal workings there at PepsiCo?
Yeah, it's one of the main reasons our team, the Demand Accelerator team, was created 6 years ago. Is we're not a pure functional team. We're not a pure marketing team, sales team, and insights team, analytics team. We actually think of it, as a series of cogs. We sit in the middle of those teams, and one of the roles that we play internally is connecting those teams against common missions. So, if I give you an example, let's say that we're launching a new product. We have a new innovation, Mountain Dew Rise, which we just launched. Just give you an example of that.
Yeah.
How do we ensure that we connect the marketing teams, the sales teams, the manufacturing teams, the go-to-market teams, all in a way that holistically the way we connect with consumers, from brand marketing through shopper marketing, through the in-store environment or the online environment, and the way that's connected to manufacturing and supply chain so that we can deliver against differentiated assortment. All those things are working together. It's pretty heavy lifting, to be honest, Joe, because it does involve a lot of different teams. But when you get that flywheel working and all of those things are working together toward a common mission versus a functional mission, a common mission, the impact is fantastic. And at PepsiCo, we talk about two things a lot. We definitely talk about growth and we talk about impact in the marketplace, but we equally talk about generating smiles with consumers. And that's the part that's really cool. When you get all those things working together, you know that you're doing a better job of delighting consumers and generating smiles.
That's a perfect segue into my next question, Jeff, in terms of generating those smiles on your customers' faces. Consumer expectations, as we've talked about, have changed, particularly around their expectations and demands for convenience. So tell us a little about what that means for brands and retailers and companies like PepsiCo, and what you're doing to put in your words, put those smiles on your faces, customers, and really delight them.
Yeah, I think it's fun to actually look backwards a little bit when we think about, convenience for consumers. And I often tell the story, if you go back 25 years and you think about the kind of commercialization phase of the internet. And at that time, when people were able to start going online, taking control over their own behavior, their own purchase behavior, from that point forward, their expectations for convenience, their expectations for variety, their expectations for value, their expectations for experience were forever changed. And if you think about the last 10 years, whether it's in education, travel, transportation, any number of areas of our lives, consumers have control. We have more control than ever before to curate the experiences that we want. So it's only natural that they should carry those expectations forward into food and beverage. And so they now, particularly coming out of the pandemic, have a heightened expectation for convenience, for value, for experience. And so I think being in a position to personalize experiences at scale. So we talk a lot about personalization at scale, which means that you have that granularity that comes out of the data around what are different consumers, what are they motivated by, what do they want, how do we pull that through to assortment or retail, but then how do you scale that up to something that's actually big enough to make a difference across big consumer populations, and honestly to make a difference for big retail partners and even a company our size. Data helps. Data and advanced analytics certainly help us to do that.
Yeah, and the consumers are better informed, I would imagine, today with all the different touch points as well.
Yeah, and there's expectations around transparency, and it's just the consumers are in control. And I think that I actually think it's a good thing, because in some sense, it's an open book test, because consumers will tell you what they want when they have the opportunity.
Building off of that fact that consumers are in control, my final question for you, Jeff, is in terms of, why is it important for PepsiCo and other business in that regard to create that trust and accountability with consumers, particularly through shared values and social beliefs? Customers, they want to buy more often than not from companies and retailers and brands that they do share common values with and align with. Tell us a little bit about kind of where you're seeing that behavior fall into play at PepsiCo, and how you're kind of trying to address that, kind of dynamic that we're seeing.
Yeah, happy to. I don't think it's new, but I do think that, over time, consumers have gained more and more control over their ability to vote with their behavior, their loyalty. They have the ability to vote, which I think is incredibly clarifying, because the things that are important. And for us, the idea of trust is foundational. I mean, it is foundational to everything we do. And I'll just point to two things. The first is it's incredibly important around our products, and that the consumers are able to have transparency to the product itself, sourcing, ingredients, full transparency. I think the other is, what kind of corporate citizen are you? And just this week, we released our most recent sustainability report, which we can get you a copy of. It's one of the things, honestly, that I'm just personally most proud of. And I think it makes a huge difference with consumers for them to be able to see all the things that we're doing to try to have a positive impact on the environment, to try to have a positive impact on other groups in society. So you'll see things in that report around water, you'll see things around agriculture, but you're also going to see things around education and employment. And I think providing a report like that is full transparency to the goals we have as an organization, the actions that we're taking as an organization, and the progress that we're making as an organization goes a long way toward building that trust that we're not just in this for transactional reasons. We're in this to make a positive impact on society.
I think that's a perfect way to end this. I think you summed it up nicely, not only the transactional value, but really to make a positive impact on society and all the work you're doing in that regard at PepsiCo. So I want to take the opportunity first to thank Jeff Swearingen of PepsiCo for joining me on today's episode of Total Retail Talks. Thank you, Jeff.
Joe, thank you for the opportunity. My pleasure. Happy to be here.
Thanks for listening. For more information on this podcast, please check out our podcast channel page at mytotalretail.com/podcast for show notes. Total Retail Talks is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Stitcher. Make sure to subscribe on our podcast channel page as well. If you've enjoyed this episode, please take a few moments to rate and review this podcast. Thanks, and until next time, this has been Total Retail Talks.